All right, quick update here on what's going on. We now have some new ties in place. We extended the track, making sure that we can make it past this switch, which has been the bigger problem. So once we add in some gondolas now, we'll be safe further back here. So the ties are now getting glued in place. They'll have to be sanded, ballasted, track laid, and they'll be just like the other track here. As mentioned before though, we had a bit of a tight radius over here when it came to coming off this switch. So I've ripped it up. And now, well, we're about to fix it all up and make it work so my steam locomotives can fit through here. My 080 was actually jumping off the track because it was too tight. It would come up and more of a sharp turn right here. So now we're going to gradually shift this over, a lot smoother transition, and that should solve it. We'll be back more with soon, hopefully, with a new update. All right, and the next steps after having sanded the ties have now been to, well, paint them. That's right, those are done, and then when we get down to that switch, a much gentler curve now coming off this switch into this bend here to continue on down the line. Makes things, I think, are going to be a little bit smoother now. That's been painted up. We're going to let that dry for the day. Hopefully come back and ballast this up tonight. Let the ballast dry overnight, and maybe finally put that track back in place. So that's step 2. We'll see when we get to step 3 and then the track work. So more to come. All right, this is a final quick update here on our progress for the yard. Now that this has been fixed, we've extended here. It was like back, I want to say about here. We've been able to then extend it, match with the other ones. Now we can actually fit 2 gondolas here, which is fantastic. Switch is way back here. And then with the crossover into here, we can then run around. This is actually going to be a team track. I just happened to pull in there last night when my son and I were hanging out. That's where that's going. And then over here, we were able to manage to fix this. If you recall last, it kind of came out and there was a sharp turn. And that sharp turn was derailing the steam engine, especially the one we just saw there. So ripped up all the ties, the ballast, removed it, put the track back down, relayed the rails, to find out as my steam engine would come across, it would actually pop the back tender wheels off. Figured out what that was. Turns out I didn't sand enough down here. There's a high point here that was shifting everything. So again, ripped up the rails, sanded that down, and then the rails are back in. And after that was done, we're now on to this switch, which is all set, ready to go. Wire is in place, not wired yet, but we're almost there. And then we got into this switch here as well. And then, sadly, I ran out of spikes. So, good news is, hobby show is just around the corner this month. So I'll be picking up some spikes then and continuing on with the rails. Getting the track work finished, getting that accomplished. Even just adding the 3 tracks here alone made a huge difference just in operations. And that's the whole point. And that's where I really get the enjoyment out of the hobby, is the operation side of it. And then once we get this part in, and then from there, we can get into where the roundhouse and turntable are. It's going to be an absolute blast. So still a lot to go, but we're making progress from now because I don't have any spikes. I thought maybe switch things up a bit. Got this little Tommy's Treehouse kit I want to make. It's been sitting there for a while. I think it's time to get on that while we're waiting for get some new spikes, and we'll see how that comes along. And until then, we'll keep plugging away and happy railroading.